All right, so let's talk about designing effective subject lines. And subject lines are critical because they're one of the easiest and most effective ways to get people to click on your email and ultimately click through to your content or your website. So a lot of people think that a creative copy approach is going to be best, and it can be effective, but it can also backfire, particularly if your subject lines become a little bit too clever so that the actual content of your email gets lost in the message. And people may become annoyed, especially if a subject line is inconsistent with the content itself. And you'll break trust. People may feel like they've been scammed or tricked into opening up your email. So if in doubt, a direct and descriptive subject line is generally going to be best. Simply tell people what the email is about and avoid too many hype or spammy words. Now, in the end, there are really no hard and fast rules. You're going to have to experiment to find out what works for your audience. And every audience is going to be a little different. But I'll walk you through some general best practices. So first of all, as much as possible, you want to use action words. These are verbs, and I find they typically work best when they're right at the beginning of your subject line. So things like save, get, manage. These are words that really compel people to action. You want to keep it to the point. 50 characters or so is going to work best. Particularly today, a lot of people are reading emails on a mobile device, and so there's that much less real estate for subject lines. On the other hand, you want to make sure your subject line has enough substance to convey some meaning. So 6 to 7 words is going to be optimal. Again, you can convey meaning in less than that or more than that, but that's just a good guideline for length in terms of words. Things like how to, listicles, like things like 3 new things, and questions can be highly effective. And these are the same principles you'll see put to use for blog articles and blog headlines. It's the same principle. You're trying to entice people to click through to engage with your content or your products. Numbers can also add a lot of credibility and specificity, whether it's 25% off or 3 new things. They speak to a very specific result, and that builds trust, and ultimately it aligns with what you're going to be delivering down the line, which is good. You've probably seen people starting to use emojis in subject lines, and I wouldn't rule them out entirely. They can be effective if used properly and sparingly. They can look spammy if they're used too much, and so you want to use them in maybe cute and clever ways, but again, tread carefully when using emojis. Bringing a sense of urgency can be very effective in terms of increasing open rates. So things like if you're having a sale, could be ends today or 2 days only, act now. These can be really effective. Emotion words can be very effective. Words like love, adore, feel, cute. These tend to elicit a kind of an emotional response that can be very effective at moving people to action. Ultimately, the best headlines help the reader imagine a better life. They're about transformation. Now, this may seem like a stretch at first, but think about how your products are going to impact someone, how they're going to make their life better, how they're going to allow them to do things perhaps that they couldn't before. And that's where you want to focus your energy in creating a subject line that really conveys that transformation that your product or your offer is going to deliver. Okay, so let's look at creating some subject lines in real life. So we'll go back to some of the campaigns that we've already created here. So in the Campaigns tab, let's scroll down. Let's start with our new product launch email, which is still in draft mode. And we will click on the Add Subject button here. So you'll notice right underneath the subject line field is how do I write a good subject line? So this is a free tool that MailChimp provides. It's called the Subject Line Researcher. And how it works is you can enter short terms related to your subject line. So in this case, we're talking about unicorns, or lucky unicorns in this case. That is a fairly obscure term. However, how we frame that product may have an impact on our open rates. So a couple of variations could be, check out our new lucky unicorn prints. Could be You'll love our new Lucky Unicorn prints. And it may be something like introducing our new Lucky Unicorn prints. So let's just have a look at those and what MailChimp thinks of these. So introducing our new Guts 4-star, that's pretty good. Check out 3-star, you'll love 3 stars. So it looks like this one of the 3 would win using MailChimp's data. This is a pretty good tool. It's a little bit limited. And so I'll show you a couple other tools outside of MailChimp as well. So I'm just going to close that for now. And I'll show you one that I like. It's a tool called CoSchedule. It's actually a blogging tool that I've used, but you can also use the same principles that you apply to writing headlines to writing subject lines. Really, the same goal is the same. So let's take the feedback we got from MailChimp and we'll type in introducing new unicorn prints. We'll analyze that one. So what I like about this tool is it looks at a whole lot of different factors and it gives you some things to think about as you're crafting subject lines. So it talks about common words, uncommon words, emotional words, and power words. And so it gets you thinking about your headlines in a whole different context. Looks at the number of characters, number of words, and also gives you some other feedback. So this one is looking pretty average. So let's take a slightly different approach. We know that questions are often good. Let's try it. Love unicorns, introducing our new prints today. So we'll add a little urgency to it. We have the new word here. We'll analyze that. So that's significantly better. We've got a score of 63. We have some uncommon words now. New, emotional, introducing, love is a power word. We've got a question in there, which we know is good. So we can we can keep trying to up our score here. This is a fun tool, but it can become a bit of a distraction, I find. You just almost like it becomes a bit of gamified the whole thing. So we'll try implementing some of the feedback they give in terms of new and power words here. Okay, and that's coming up significantly better. So anything above a 70 is pretty good. You can play with this tool, and again, it can drive you a little bit crazy. Don't allow yourself to get too distracted, but anything over a 70 is going to be tricky to get, and you can sometimes get a little bit higher depending on what direction you're going. But this looks like a good way to go. Love unicorns, introducing lucky new prints for spring. So we'll just cut and paste that there. And so that looks like a good subject line, but how do you really know if it's going to perform in the context of your campaign? Well, you don't. And you can't get too hung up on trying to craft the perfect subject line. Ultimately, it's better to put something out than to waste hours of your time trying to craft the ultimate subject line. However, if you've got a big enough list, in an upcoming lesson, I will show you how to use A/B testing to try out different ideas and see if you can notice some patterns in the way your audience responds to subject lines. So that was our product launch. Let's take a look at a different campaign here. Just save that. And we'll go back to our campaigns. Let's try a sale campaign now. So we had our Mother's Day bundles campaign. Again, we'll click on the subject line here. So I'm going to show you a different tool. This is the free email subject line grader, and I'll have links to all of these in a resource document attached to this lesson. But let's try some sale emails, and let's take just a pretty straightforward approach. I find with sales, you just want to directly state the offer. Don't get too fancy. So the offer in this case is up to 55% off Mother's Day bundles. So let's try that. Great, 97%. So that's a good subject line. It's got some numbers in it. It's short. It's a good length. We got a character and word count that are quite low. We could say today only up to 50%. So it's essentially dinging this one for length. So this one is very specific to subject lines. Let's turn this around. We'll phrase this in a question. Want to save up to 55%. Say on Mother's Day bundles. Make that a question. And that's the best yet. So that's a little bit longer, but it's giving us extra points for making this a provocative question. So we could go with that one. So there are some tools for coming up with subject line ideas based on the principles we've discussed. Again, in the end, you're going to have to test different ideas, and I'll show you how to do that in the next lesson.